In this life, you're going to love a few people and love them fully. Love them, protect them, have their back, be their ally, get uncomfortable for them and with them. Just love them fully.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back to another episode of Expanded. I am so excited. We've got such a good episode for you today. We have entrepreneur, cookbook author, and owner of Moon Juice, Amanda Chantal Bacon, on. It is such an expansive episode. Lacy and Amanda have been friends for quite some time and even worked together at a point before Lacy launched To Be Magnetic. And it's so cool to see them reminisce over versions of themselves in the past, who they are now, how much they've grown, motherhood, parenting, spirituality, grief, aliens, beauty routines, aging, death. I mean, they cover everything. And it was really cool. It feels like you're a fly in the wall in this conversation and two really powerful female expanders for me, especially. So this was such a great episode. I know you guys are going to love it. It's a long one, but it is so worth it. So enjoy. And we are doing a really fun pop-up book signing event at Moon Juice in November. We are selling tickets to come get a journal and a magnesium from Moon Juice bundled together and meet Lacy and I with a signed copy of the journal. Check the show notes. There's only 50 spots for this event available, so snag them while you can and come say hello in Venice.
And now, a word from our partners. By now, you've probably realized that we have partnered with the absolute best brands that we completely believe in and used prior to partnering. And since we had the opportunity to partner this year in order to take this podcast to the next level, bringing bigger and better guests and a better podcast in general, one of our favorite brands that we've partnered with is Beekeepers Naturals. Not only that, but we've recorded an episode with founder Carly. You can see that linked below. And this season, I've particularly loved Beekeepers Naturals for immunity for a number of reasons. Because my body's been working so hard at producing milk, it means that there have been quite a few times that my immunity has dropped in the last couple of months. So without fail, I use the Bee Immune throat spray every single day, 4 squirts in the back of my throat. I, in fact, just used this last week, and the next day I woke up without a cold, which I was so grateful for. However, when we did get a cold about a month and a half ago, which I do believe in. I believe in the body really needs to deal with colds. I think it's really great to stimulate immunity once a year. And when that did happen, and of course I gave it to Max, I did save Teddy from getting it simply by squirting breast milk in her nose every couple of hours. But of course Max did get it. And it got to the point where we had to use their Be Better cough syrup, both day and nighttime. And I really love that they have the nighttime support. What I think makes a big difference about beekeepers is it's almost like you have an entire medicine cabinet at your disposal inside your house, and it's all from the power of bees. You've heard me talk about it in prior partnership communications, but they take the highest standard when it comes to working with bees and the environment. Not only is it the most non-toxic and cleanest, but the way they treat their queen and their hives is unlike any other brand that we know of. And the other tiny little secret I want to let you in on, I actually just had to do this last week when I cut my toe on glass. The moment I cut it, I washed it under the sink. I sprayed the propolis on it to kill any bacteria and to help soothe the inflammation. And then I put the bee-powered honey on top of it and put a Band-Aid. If you are wanting to create your beekeeper's natural medicine cabinet, go ahead and use the code, all caps, TBM, for 15% off at checkout. So again, that code is all caps, TBM, for 15% at checkout. So things have gotten pretty hippie in Topanga. Back when I lived in Echo Park, I had a pretty decent edible garden. But Teddy has re-inspired me to go to the 9th degree. So we have a massive garden structure that we built to plant our biodynamic garden. And we are seeding with the new moon and, harvesting with the full moon. And my beets are already coming up. My beans are coming up. My chard's coming up. Kale, I'm planting in succession. All of this to say that I really, really have the goal to set Teddy's foundation of her microbiome to be as powerful as it can be within my control of the toxicity that we live in today's age. That's why I've been really committed and privileged enough to breastfeed her through all of the challenges that I've gone through, which have been many, and you've heard about it on this podcast. It's also why I began taking Seed Probiotic, which we partnered with earlier this year. As you know from hearing me talk about them before, that our marketing director, Grace, introduced us to Seed. She's been taking it for ages. She's seen profound results. So when it came time to enrich my milk and help with Teddy's gas, I was like, I've got to get on a probiotic via my doulas, and Seed was obviously the gold standard to turn to because it is just that. It's the gold standard within the probiotic world. Things that I really appreciate about Seed is that it has a 100% survival rate, meaning that it absolutely gets down to your gut to colonize it, whereas competitors have about a 20% survival rate. Their advisory board is chock with some of the most profound scientists, Dr. Gregory Reed being one of them. He's actually the chief scientist that coined the word probiotic. So safe to say everybody at TBM is using Seed Probiotics in their monthly subscription. We're incredibly proud of it. We are beyond proud to be partnered with them. If you are interested in trying their probiotic, you'll receive 15% off the first month by going to the link below, and that's at seed.com. And using the code CAPS TBM and the number 15. Again, that's TBM 15. All right, on to the episode. Welcome, Amanda.
We made it. We made it.
Just to explain to everybody, we spent a good portion of the day yesterday and today figuring out tech issues to make this happen.
And I'm impressed, Lacy. I'm really impressed with your technical skills. And I feel like this was a mirror into just my illiteracy.
And same here. Thanks for Jessica, honestly. Well, I want to kick off where we always start, Amanda, which is obviously, we need to know your sun, moon, and rising, which I think I know. You shared it with me not long ago.
So I am Aries with an Aquarius moon and Scorpio rising. And I feel like when people know me and meet me, they don't see the Aries. And then I say Aquarius, and then they their face recovers and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And the Scorpio rising, my Scorpio people out there, if you're listening, you know there's like a Scorp rising thing and it's this psychic connection. And I have a lot of friends that are either Scorp or Scorp rising, and we don't have to talk.
Isn't Shiva? She's a Scorpio rising?
That would make sense. That would
Yeah.
totally make sense.
I think so. I actually know quite a few of you guys. I think it's a really magical rising to have.
I love it. It's sexy too.
Oh, yeah. Like I'm so much more cerebral. And then you're tapped in with the sex dust and everything. Shiva's very sexual feeling. Most of the Scorpio risings I know have that energy. And meanwhile, I'm over here like in the clouds trying to tap in always. What's your Venus?
My Venus is Taurus.
Ah, that's really a good one. And what about your husband?
My husband is Taurus, and then he is Gemini. And actually, my husband and I, so outside of the sun, moon, and rising, in the rest of our chart, we have a mirror where he will be, Aries and Venus, and there's a few other houses or planets, and I'll be Taurus.
Wow.
So there's that. And our daughter is really interesting. She was born on the solstice. So my husband likes to say that she's Gemini because he has an attachment to Geminis. So I guess as a family, we all just say she's a Gemini. Technically, she is a Gemini Cancer cusp. You're not either one. It's a specific thing, and it's just that one day. But if we're just going to go with the family story that, oh, she's just a Gemini, they are mirrored with Gemini and Taurus. And then she and I share the Aquarian moon.
Oh, wow. And what about her rising?
Taurus.
Wow. Okay. See. Well, what's really beautiful is it's like you were I don't know, maybe it was Teddy's. You were like my Aries angel that kept appearing towards the end of birth for me, getting near birth. And it was like out of nowhere, just when I needed you, we would run into each other. And you kept sharing such wisdom with me to get through the birth and to, just be present for it and what to expect, and such good advice. I want to share, if you're open to it, your story of your birth with Vajra, because it's really magical, especially being a little solstice baby.
I want to share everything, Lacey.
Okay.
I just want to share everything and everything with all of you and everybody this morning. So don't be shy.
Great.
And I want to say, I think Patty was your doula, right?
She was, yeah.
I love Patty. And Patty, if you're out there, take no offense, but I feel like actually I was Teddy's real doula.
You were like Teddy. Wait, I have one tiny tangent to share. We got this dog right before having Teddy, 3 weeks before having her.
Oh my God, that's insane.
It's insane. Everybody was like, you guys are just nuts. And it's so funny because he mirrors her in everything in her chart. He's her exact compatible puppy. And one day I was doing a meditation after she came, because I was just going to say, maybe you're one of her guides. But I was doing this meditation and he's so goofy because he's still such a puppy. In the meditation, I started to invite in, I was like, Teddy's guides, I'd like to meet you. And all that came forward was Odie, our dog. And Max's face when I told him was like, uh-oh, that's Teddy's guide. But I feel like there's something there, some magic as to why you're appearing. But I love to hear that. Yes, you were her real doula.
I'm a real doula. No, I'll take guide. I don't know. I guess I'm living and I'm in the flesh. So maybe that's auntie. I don't know. I'll take guide. I'll take auntie.
Cosmic auntie.
Doula, to give me something. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, though, with guides. I did recently this weekend seminar with a woman who is a medium. And so it's basically like a mediumship seminar. That was like my version of me time. I don't know. I think some people, like 2 years postpartum, that was the first thing I had done without my daughter. Some people like to drink. Some people like to get their nails done. For me time, girl time felt like this mediumship. at like a weird hotel near LAX. Do you know these types of
Oh, yeah.
seminars that you find yourself in with like the fluorescent lights and the odd group of people from all over the country that have flown in?
My favorite part of this is that you did an in-person mediumship training. Like, did you get the hotel in LA and do the whole thing?
Well, I just, I spent the days in the hotel because
Okay.
we were discussing before. I haven't spent a night away from my daughter yet. I feel like I'm a very animalistic mother, which I think is like a blessing, and then also has its parts where I'm like, oh, maybe it would serve me in my marriage to not be so hands-on and animalistic with my child. But phases of life.
Honestly, and it'll go by so fast.
It really does. It really does. But in this mediumship, so there was a lot in this that I've never actually really talked about with anyone. But we got into spirit guides and doing this meditation and having them show up. And absolutely nobody showed up for me. No one. It was like, walk up the staircase, go into the room, feel the oxytocin in your heart. I mean, that wasn't the real meditation, close to it. And then ask them to appear. And I had this pretty profound weekend of just like fully channeling people's grandparents and getting into all of this stuff. And I actually didn't even believe in the method. And then there it was working. And then when we got to my guides, no one appeared.
What did the person say who was training?
She said that, and this made a lot of sense to me, that especially if you can talk to spirit guides, that your guides may actually protect you. And they may not want to show up because if they do, you'd become too attached to them and you'd be asking them too many questions, and they're there to just like help you on your way. And yeah, I mean, there was like a lot of interesting stuff that we got into.
So do you feel like you've had that gift for a while of being able to communicate with spirits that have passed, etc.?
I feel like there is some type of communication that I've naturally had my whole life. And I don't know that I would put it in the box of I communicate with people that have passed. I feel like I can see things and hear things. And so this was an interesting course, actually. So we did some tests if there were empaths in the room. She was like, you've got a lot of work to do. We have to get you out of that state. You won't be healthy. It's no way to live. So there was some work for some of those folks to do. And then if you fell into the psychic category, she also wanted to knock the psychic out of you.
That's amazing.
Do some she wanted to do like a little, it was kind of like physical therapy exercises to do on the side to actually get yourself out of the place where you're hearing things or seeing things or even having conversations with people. She said that the healthy place, the sustainable place to be is more in this mediumship, because when you start having conversations with entities out there and they start recommending things for you to do, having opinions, and when you start having this like back and forth dialogue, you're no longer in a safe, heart-centered place. It was a long weekend. We talked a lot about it. So it gave me some things to think about, And maybe if anybody else is out there and feeling like they're having conversations back and forth, try not doing that. And so it has been a little bit of physical therapy. It was like, oh, maybe, that's not the healthiest place to float around, and better to actually get really grounded, get really centered, get really open. And if somebody wants to connect to their spirit guides, that you can connect, be open to receive information, but it's less of like the psychic chatter, if that makes sense.
You know what everybody listening is sitting and wondering right now is, where did she train at? Everyone. It's going to be the number one thing that fills our inbox for the weekend.
So we were at the Hilton courtyard in some fluorescent room. You guys, I don't even know how I wound up here. Honestly, I had a dear friend pass.
Yeah, I knew when you were talking, that's what it was.
Yeah, I had a dear friend pass. And this was my first experience of like real grief, shock, grief, And I was at an interesting place in my relationship with this person. She was somebody who I feel like was a soulmate and a great love of my life alongside my husband and my children. Anamkara is how she would describe it. So I will take that and use that. So, in the years before her death, which even saying her death sounds so odd to me, which was
Mm-hmm.
very sudden, very shocking, very unexpected. We hadn't been as close in the day to day, and I think that we were on very different paths. And I did things that she probably didn't agree with, and she did things I didn't agree with, and we had some space, and then we came back together in the last 2 years. And it was really beautiful that we could come back together, and just there was nothing to even air out or talk about. It was like we just love each other, and that's that. She was a great lover, and she taught me a lot about love. That experience taught me a lot about love. Is you don't have to agree with everything that someone says or does to absolutely love them and for that love to really be alive.
Which I think is a huge universal message in general right now.
Yes.
I think it's a big lesson.
It was a huge lesson. And I'll just throw one more thing out there. If we're talking about lessons, and she seems to be, like coming through and wanting to get on this podcast too.
Yeah, which seems like her.
Yeah, totally. Oh, you guys are talking about astrology and spirits.
Completely.
The big lesson that I got in my grief, and this is like a heavy mom, no sleep conversation, is like, here we are, and very non-linear, but I feel like we're going to tie all the loose ends.
Oh, yeah.
So the big things that came up in this first opening of the grief portal, which is painful, and it hit really, really, really deep into my heart, but there's also something really beautiful about it. And it's very much that same portal of birth,
Mm-hmm.
which you're probably still in, like that portal still probably open for you.
Yeah, it feels like I'm just in a huge abyss that has no beginning or end still. So it's certainly not closed yet.
Yeah. I mean, it is that life death portal where you're 1 foot here and 1 foot out there, and you can hear a lot of things and feel a lot of things. It's a beautiful place to be, and it can be joyful and painful. It's very heart centered. So I don't know, grief like that is a gift in itself and an all encompassing thing to navigate for a little bit. But somewhere in there, she came in, she hadn't, she must have still been really on earth because this was shortly after she left her body. And she came in, she was like, you need to pull it together.
I love that.
You need to do what you're fucking here to do. I've been telling you this for the last decade, and I need you to just make the first step. Pay attention. I was like, okay, what am I doing? She was like, get onto your computer and Google this. And it was the most, just medium, mentor, teacher, psychic. I just like put in some words,
Uh-huh.
and this woman appeared. There was no picture of her. I didn't really think twice. I checked in. I was like, am I really doing this? She has a seminar in California in, like 3 weeks. She was like, yes, pay, do it. Like, okay. And so I did it. And I have to say, I didn't know anything about this woman or her method. When I sat down in the room, I was like, oh, I really don't resonate with this method. This isn't going to work for me. But I sunk into it. It absolutely worked for me.
Wow.
I didn't really believe in anything that she was saying. And I slipped into it, and it was an incredible experience.
And so there's so many questions I have about this. Number one, did whom we're talking about come through and speak to you further during this time and visit you further? And B, what was the reason for you to hone in on this skill set or this muscle or now a new process?
Well, my friend was very much there. She was very much there that day. She was very much with me for a couple of weeks, and now she feels really far away. She feels, there, and my access to her heart and her energy and everything that we share is very much inside of me. But I'm not having, the visitations where it's like randomly playing songs out of my phone that's not even on to speak to me, getting me to go see this woman at LAX, like waking me up at dawn to hug me. So that is no longer happening, and it feels farther out. The other thing that I was going to say, and I'm just going to throw it out there. So it was my first time with grief. It was also my first time experiencing regret.
Wow, that's huge.
And I had very deep, real regret. And I realized that truly I've never been regretful about anything in my life except for this. And there were two pieces to the regret. One was she was canceled. She was someone who was, very much canceled. She was mid cancellation. Her canceling didn't even come to its full peak. I think if she was alive, the canceling would still be going. And I had many opportunities to publicly speak out for her in her defense. And I was given many opportunities by the press. I always got contacted when a cancel piece would come out. I'm like, what was my comment? And I didn't, because it's like, how the media works. You're either going to bash them, or you're going to say something about them that doesn't fit their narrative, and they're going to copy and paste your words in a way that does fit their narrative, or you're going to respond to them, and I don't know, they're going to take you down too for trying to defend your friend. So I didn't engage, but I had a real regret about that. And she was a very strong person on the outside. And on the inside, she was really hurt. And it really affected her. And I don't know, I just want to put that out there, that it doesn't need to be on like a big public stage. But if someone is getting bullied in any way, and you see it happening, and they're your friend, and again, you don't have to agree with everything, that you don't have to see eye to eye to love someone and to stand up for them. And I think that, it's not black and white, it's gray, and nobody deserves to be bullied. And so I don't know, I'm putting it out there for us all.
No, I think it's really important. And I think that everyone's on the precipice of this message and this lesson, wherever people fall on the spectrum of it, that I think we're learning that we're all human and we're all entitled to an opinion and a feeling. And the overarching message you have that is so beautiful, and it actually all ties together from the very beginning, is we can still love each other, even if we don't fully all agree with the same thing.
And I think that, that comes in when you really love someone. So it's not that you have to be overly loving to people that you don't really love. But in this life, you're going to love a few people, and love them fully, love them, protect them, have their back, be their ally, get uncomfortable for them and with them, just love them fully, because they die, because we die, because you never know, because friendships, relationships, even if they don't end via death, sometimes we just take different paths and your time is over together. That magic, liminence that you're in, that may end. So just love and protect fully.
I think that's beautiful. It's also a very animal way to love, just as you're talking about your daughter. It's so powerful, and that loyalty and the depths of actually going all the way with someone.
Yeah, if you're given that opportunity, it's the true gift in life here on earth. I said to some friends a year ago, probably, I had this epiphany, and I realized, like, what is friendship? What does that mean to me? Who feels like a real friend? Like, how would I decipher what a real friend is? And I realized it wasn't the amount of time that I spent with someone or necessarily our history, but a real friend I decided felt like if I went mad and I killed someone. I mean, this is like an odd, just like, I don't know, go with me on this trip. Don't cancel me because I'm saying
Yeah.
this. Just go on the trip with me. So like imagine that you've completely lost your mind for whatever reason. You're just like, I think there's a French term in the court they use, and I'm not remembering it now. But it's some like passionate moment and you lose your mind and you're driven wild and you kill someone in that moment. And you're terribly regretful afterwards, but you're reeling and you realize, my God, I've just killed someone. Who are the people that you could go to and go crying and say, I killed someone? I cannot believe it. And that they would not judge you for a minute. They would obviously not condone the fact that you had just killed someone, but they were going to love you through it. I mean, that's like a really odd, like, I don't even know how we
No,
got
man, I love your bar of friendship. I've got to like up my bar of friendship. That's legit.
That's some Aries shit right there.
And maybe a little Scorpio rising.
Maybe. If I come to you in the middle of the night with a bloody knife, would you still love me?
Do you have my back? Other people are like, would you help me move? It's like someone else's bar. That's legit. I love it. I'm down.
I mean, are you that friend, Lacy?
Watch. You just watch. I mean, you have to try. You have to see, but I've got your back.
Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't be the accomplice. It's like maybe I'm not saying friendship needs to be that like you then are part of the murder, but that even if you felt that you needed to call the cops and put me in the slammer, you do so without judgment in your heart.
Yep.
You love me.
I love that. Now I have to hear your bar for your husband, like your true lover.
Oh,
What's
God.
that?
He had to stay up really late last night, even though he was exhausted coming home from tour, and sort out my technical issues so that I could get on this podcast.
Wow.
In the morning.
What a Taurus.
What a Taurus. God, that's a great, right? If that's for friendship.
Now you have to sit and have an epiphany this year, and Greg can see what he's in for.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. Although I feel like it's a little more mellow for my soulmate. It's just sort of like, there's no test. We don't have to think about anything. Like you are the only person on the planet that I could be with.
I love it. Well, let's segue into that for a sec, because I think that's really expansive for people. Even when I met you years and years ago, I know that you were in a space where you were curious about finding this person, your other half. How did that come to be?
It happened, I really think, in hindsight. I felt something happen in my body in the moment that I'm going to describe. And in hindsight, I can look back and be like, whoa, that was like a biological unlock that occurred. So I was at a place where I was getting very analytical about how I was going to experience the family that I wanted to experience. I had a son, and so I was a single mom. And I started to do the math around fertility, which, is something that's real as a woman. And it's not for a man, it's for a woman. And it's something that comes up as you start to get around 35. And I don't want to say this to scare anyone or stress anyone out. This was the experience I had. And I also want to say that people are having healthy, natural births, 10 years later at 45. So this was only my experience. It was also in my Vedic chart that I was in this big Venus phase where expansion of business, having babies, expansion of family, all of that was happening. And it was going to end at 35. That was the end of the window. And this comes from a Vedic astrologer in India, and he's a man of few words, and he's never really been wrong. And what he was seeing in my chart and what we had been talking about for years, like it really rang true to me. And so, 35 was coming, and I started to like do the math around when you meet someone, but then you have to get to know them for a year. And then for me, I really wanted to get married before having a child since I had been a single mother. Like that was something that was going to make me feel safe. And then, there's the trying to get pregnant, which could take years. And then there's the pregnancy. And I was like, oh my God, at the end of my calculatrice, at the end of the night, I was like, I'll be 92 by the time this happens. It's not possible.
I think, though, a lot of people can resonate with this that I know and who I used to work with, where they would say, like, I'm at this age, exactly what you're saying. I have to meet the person. We have to get to know each other. And then, if that's somebody's path, it's like an engagement ensues. And then a year later, a wedding. And then having, if we want a baby. So I think this is so potent. I'm excited to continue because it's really expansive that it all unfolded perfectly.
I was there, you guys. And on top of that, I was a single mom. So I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't hanging out. And I was working 60, 70-hour weeks. There was no time or space to go like frolic and flirt and date. That just was not on the table. And, probably this crowd really feels me on this. I need a lot of alone time. So I'm not somebody that's like, I want to go out, and I don't drink. I wasn't going to go out to the party. I kind of hate being around people, to be honest, in large doses. That's not true. I love being around people, but in small doses. And so there's a lot of single momming and then working, and then meditation came first, and then my biomed came second. Walks in the woods, alone. So there were like all of these boxes that needed to be checked. And then thinking about meeting my soulmate and having a family came like way after biomed. So it just like the odds weren't really in my favor. And that started to scare me too. When I was like, wait, my soulmate isn't just going to like ring the doorbell and I'm going to come down and open the door. And then it's like love at first sight. Like, how is this thing going to happen? So, that added to the agita of it all. Anyway, simultaneously, I was also trying to force this narrative in my head of like, you know what? It's fine. You have a relationship to God. You have one beautiful child. You have your work, purpose, mission, all of that has been fulfilled in a really glorious way. And that's what you get in this life. Just be happy about it. Accept it. That's your story. I was like, okay, that's cool. I can accept it. And then I had this little female spirit that would show up and say, but what about me? Like, don't forget about me. And I would try to like swat it away. And oh no, that's not real. That's not a real little spirit baby. That is some projection. It's like a projection of a spirit baby that I'm throwing out there to torture myself. I feel like, it's like I'm with my people. You guys speak my language. I could just be free here.
Oh, everyone here is tracking.
So I really I grappled with that for like a good year or two. It's like, it's your weird projection. Like you do this to just guilt and shame yourself. I don't know. It's weird. Then I went and I spent some time with Dr. Pratima in New York.
Love her.
Which, she's known for like the Ayurvedic facial and all of this. But Pratima is a great mentor to me. And we don't do facials, but we really we sit in her office and she's like my grandmother. She's a mentor. I mean, she feels like my spirit guide. And so we sat in her office and I just wanted to talk about my thyroid and cortisol for a minute. And she wasn't having it. And she just shut me up. And she immediately said, when you're in cosmic consciousness, and you know what this means, it means when you're in this place where you are meditating, where you're very quiet, and you know that you're in that place, and you're going to have communication to the cosmos. When you're in that place, Every time you're in that place, ask your daughter to send her father.
Mm. I tell that to my friends even now, but I have the chills.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, no, I'm aborting that mission. I'm accepting that I'm just going to like be a meditator and my son, we're like out of the babyhood and I'm going to have all this free time. And that's just not my story. And she really debunked that one for me. And I hadn't talked about a baby. I hadn't talked about anything with her. And it was just like through my pulse. And she is a mystic. She's full mystic. Just by her sitting down with me. I don't know. My daughter must have talked to her too. Don't know. But she told me to do this. I was pretty reticent actually. I was like, I don't want to go back into the like math at night. And, it turns out I'll be 92 by the time I'm pregnant. Like, no, thank you. But I did it. And to be honest, I think I only did it twice. I just put it out there twice, very quickly, no ceremony, like driving a car. I was in cosmic consciousness and like threw it out there. And then I let it go and I moved on to other things. And I was putting out a book and had some book signings in New York. And I went to a yoga class and it felt like this great physical release. And I was just feeling energized and grateful and happy. And I got home and I was feeling so energized, grateful, and happy that I could just be alone, just take a shower, just go to my biomat, just put clean pajamas on, just put coconut oil in my hair, Again, like, how are you meeting your soulmate when that's what you want to do? So I was like, you guys must know this moment when you feel really good and you feel so grateful to be alive and you feel so grateful to be alone and you feel so full and complete on your own. I was really, really in that moment. And this is the moment. I was in the shower. It was like God came through me and I was so happy. And I just said, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and be alone. I'm so happy. I feel so complete. And then this little voice said to me, and offer it to someone else. I was like, huh? Okay, great. And I was like, I feel so complete and I have more to share. There was almost like this huge wave of energy that went through my body when I said that. And I didn't know why. And it wasn't my own thought. It felt a little foreign, but I had said it and it brought a lot of energy. And then I went and had my night alone in peaceful sleep and everything was great. And within 10 to 12 days, my husband showed up to a book signing that I had in LA. And he was a friend, and he had been a friend for many years. And he was someone that I never sexualized. And I really just thought of him as the sun. When I recalled this person in my mind, it's like, ooh, I would smile and, the sunshine would get really bright inside my head. And it's like, ooh, that's an angelic guy. It's a really good guy, but never anything sexual. And he came to my book signing, which was almost 5 years ago to the day. And he gave me a really big hug. And I had a friend who happened to just be there and she took a picture of this hug. And I didn't know that she did, but gave me a really big hug. And that was lovely and great. This friend sent me a picture of the hug and I looked at it and I feel like, I don't know, I'll put it on Instagram stories or something so you guys can see this hug. It was not a normal hug.
Oh.
And there was a picture of it. It was like a deep, deep embrace. And so I sent it to Greg as a joke. I texted him and I was like, what is going on here? Again, no sexy feelings, no bells going off. And I also just want to put in there that I had this very rigid Aries mindset. And this was my mantra around dating. What's the point of dating? I don't have time for that. I don't need a whole date to figure out if I like someone or not. I know in 3 seconds. So what's the point? That was my mantra. And so here I am, like getting the deep embrace from my soulmate, no bells going off yet. I just think it's really funny. And he thought that was pretty funny too. And then I think we like went and had tea a week later. Again, like nothing sexy happening for me, nothing flirty, just my dear friend. He kissed me. It wasn't like a very aggressive kiss, but it was like this kiss on the lips. And this was the first time in my life I've ever done this, but I just closed my mouth. I did not receive.
Wow.
And I was like, no, thank you. Like, you're my friend. I want to keep. I didn't say all of this, but I closed my mouth and then like he went to hug me and he smelled really nice. He smelled like hinoki and his hair was really soft. And all of that was like really yummy. I just didn't want to kiss him. And then he went in again to kiss and I closed my mouth. I was like, whoa, dude. What? Like, this is bold.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel predatory in any way. It felt really sweet, but it was just like, no, thank you. And so I was like, okay, well, good night. So I drove home and I sent him a text, which again, like in hindsight, looking back, he was like, I thought you were flirting with me. I was like, I was not flirting with you. So I sent him this text message because I think I'm a really good kisser. And like never in my life had I just like shut down a kiss. And I actually just wanted my friend to know that I was a good kisser. Not like I'm a prude, like I'm actually a really good kisser. And so I sent him a text message that I think was just some cheeky thing. And I was like, for the record, I'm actually a really good kisser. What is that about? I don't know. That's like some weird. And so he took that as a flirt. And so I think because, he took it as a flirt, he was like, oh, that's kind of hot, like shut me down twice, but then text me 10 minutes later. So I thought that it had been established, like, we're good. I'm a good kisser. I'm not kissing you. We're friends. He thought I was flirting. And, a week later, we wound up in North Dakota. I'll keep it short, alone in North Dakota in a motel together. It was not meant to be that way. It's like a lot of strings had to get pulled up there by someone to make that happen. But there we were. And I was like, thank God we went through the kissing thing last week and everyone knows we're just friends because here we are in this motel and like it could get awkward. And I had a meditation and he was in the shower and he came out of the shower and I was still kind of like coming out of a meditation and he touched the back of my neck and my head was down on the floor and he touched the back of my neck and there were like electrical pulses that went up and down my spine. And this voice, like the booming voice came in and said, when you look up, you're going to see your husband.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And then I didn't want to look up. I was terrified. And I kept my head down on the ground for a really long time, you guys. And that was that. And so I guess the part of this story that was like long and intricate is that all of that, that I want to like hit home for you guys is all of the math doing on all of those nights and like, how is it going to happen? And you got to know someone first. And I never leave my house. And that was already sorted out for me. We had been friends for many years. I already trusted this person. I knew this person. And we were engaged 10 months later. And I was pregnant at 35 in my Venus chapter. And it happens. It happens fast.
I love it. I also want to share too. Well, I got to know you so long ago and I got to see in a very different lens, sort of the back end. And what I remember, because I think I've only met him once or twice, but I remember going to, is it Another Kind of Sunrise? Was that his?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, I remember, and he sold moon juice and it's all just so beautifully woven together and divine, how it comes around later. I think that's so special. And for myself, for people listening, I had a little bit of a different experience, but I was also starting to get to an age where with my old partner, it was like, if I stay with this person, there's a term called fertility robbers in LA, I think. It's kind of known. I'm like, if I stay with this person who does not want children and doesn't, want to commit, all of that will pass by me. And I even actually remember when there was a brief time that I was helping you out and I was probably the worst employee on the planet or 1099 on the planet, but you read my cards at one point at your house. We were working and you pulled the cards on my last relationship and you were like, you've got to leave. And it took me a year later. But when I met Max, which was 6 weeks later, and, my ex had been away helping some grandparents transition from life in Paris for 6 months. So I really had this mourning period where I kind of was able to leave the relationship pretty complete in a way. When I met Max 6 weeks later, I had 2 premonitions after hanging because I had similar experiences with him where I was like, oh no, he's too young. Oh no, this can't be my person. But I had 2 premonitions in meditation. One was a pregnant belly and another was getting married. And I went, to this person? I remember that. So for anybody listening, I think that that's really powerful to know that it all unfolds so perfectly when you are in that place of doing the math and like, this can't happen. It's never going to happen. It's so far away. Whatever your version of the math is, it's going to happen. So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. One thing let's touch into to expand people further who are like, cool, but what about business? If I'm correct on this, you're a Manhattan girl.
Yeah, I grew up in Manhattan. I was born there.
And if I remember as well, would you say, I think your mom was a pretty suave businesswoman?
Yeah, I come from a house, like an 80s household where my mom was the breadwinner and my mom was at work every day, all day. My mom was the businessman, if you will. And I mean, I'm not that old. I'm getting there, but I'm not like 65. And just thinking about my childhood, my mom was the only mother that worked, really. It was different, you guys. Things were different, even just 38 years ago. I hear some of my mom's stories around trying to get a credit card, trying to open a bank account when she and her business partner, they were both female. I don't know, it's a trip. History is so important to help us think about what's happening now. Anyway, that was a tangent. Yes, I'm from Manhattan. And yes, my mom worked.
Would you say that watching her in that experience helped you, what we kind of call expanders here, just really opened up your subconscious that, wait, anything I pursue that I love could potentially be successful?
I think in a deep subconscious way, yes. In a more conscious way, no. I think that we want to rebel against our parents. And so, my mom worked in fashion, and one part of my rebellion was that I was only going to wear jeans and t-shirt, like hated dresses. Get the hell out of here. What are these high heels? Why are you always putting lipstick on? The other part of my rebellion was, starting to take acid at 11.
At 10, like in Manhattan.
Shit. Just being a parent of a 10-year-old now is like,
I know.
that was another part of my rebellion. And then the other part of my rebellion was, I can remember having these thoughts at like 18, 19, feeling like I wanted to have children. I wanted to be a mother, and I didn't want to have a career or work that would take me away from that. And that was going to be a heavy rebellion for me. So I don't know, it must have done something. There must have been some like deep subconscious empowerment that happened, seeing my mom and her partner and hanging out in those offices that were all women. That gets in there, that does things, but it wasn't conscious.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And when you kind of look at Rohan, being a single mom with him, what do you think his experience will be looking back? Because you guys have been through so much together.
We have been through so much together. I'm really curious about what his experience will be. And then, a lot of that time may go into his deep subconscious, like 0 to 7 file, because Greg really came into his life when he had just turned 5. And
Wow.
so I think a lot of his conscious memories are of having a stepfather and having, our home look this way and feel this way. He does have memory, it's like when Vajra's crying and having a little temper tantrum and like, all of her antics. That's when he'll look at me and say, remember when it was just us? So there is some memory in there, and I think they're really like sweet, cozy memories.
Yeah.
But he did say to me he must have been 6, and it was a few Thanksgivings ago, and we woke up early, and I was pregnant, and we were married. And he said the sweetest thing, and he said, "Today I'm grateful that you made a family for me."
Oh,
So he's a really sweet guy. I think, he is not somebody that is going to need to be alone and have his 10 boxes that need to be ticked before he can relate to people. He's very social.
because he's a Virgo sun, right? I think I remember that.
Yeah.
What's his moon and rising?
He has Libra rising
Mm.
and Cancer moon.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Oh, so special. What a beautiful thing to say. And I just love that he has that family and structure now. And you guys, have such a beautiful relationship happening. Okay. So on the health front, like, let's segue into the health front. You've created all of these incredibly magical dusts and now incredible supplements. My big question to you is because I remember seeing you when I was, very early pregnant in Moon Juice. It's the first time I'd seen you in so long. And you looked incredible, like incredible. And you still obviously do. But at that point, that was a year ago now, I would say ish, around this time, to bounce back from birth. You're somebody after this pregnancy, I think, that didn't lose hair for the first time and have really just gained stamina, and you look fantastic. Tell us what's going on there.
Oh, thanks, Lacey. I work really hard. I work really hard at it. It's not, I don't lean into luck. I don't lean into I'll do it later. Well, with some things I do. But when it comes to physical body health, I prioritize it. It's really as simple as that. I really believe in epigenetics, and I really, really deeply believe in stress. You can call it stress, you can call it fear, whatever is going to speak to you. I know that those feelings in your body are going to create a different body for you, and a different life experience for you. And I feel that it starts with stress. And if you are in a stressed, energetic state, that's going to print out. And so I've gone really deep on what are the things that can pull me out of feeling stressed. And it's not to say that I'm not stressed, because those things come in all the time, but it's like waves, let the waves roll in and then let them roll out, and don't get stuck. Don't get stuck in that, chronic stress loop. And so, I've had a long journey with this. I had an autoimmune condition, and this was pre-wellness industry. So it's not like you could go on to the 197 autoimmune Instagram pages and get all these tips and hacks. It was pretty dark ages. And it took a lot to figure it out. But what I really got to, and this was getting to this place through an acupuncturist, through a kinesiologist, through a functional medicine doctor, through an endocrinologist, Bruce Lipton. He is somebody, and I started reading The Biology of Belief, and I believe I was 19. And then I just started to really sink into quantum physics, because there's a part of me still that isn't ready to fully let go of my good Western training. It's like, show me the science. Like, I still to this day have it. It's like we start the conversation with channeling at LAX, but there's still there's like that kind of like skeptical New Yorker still in there, like, show me the stats.
That's like, give me my blood panel.
Yeah. So, but I recognize that, like, okay, there's that part of me. Let's work with it. Let's give the skeptic, give the scientist, give the like good Western citizen the information that she needs, so that you can actually just flow into quantum physics. But, my brain needs to hang on to something there sometimes. So, all of these specialists, and then really having this layer of The Biology of Belief. And if you haven't read that book, go read that book. It's quantum physics. He does a beautiful job of explaining it. So kind of meshing all of those things, and having this autoimmune experience, and realizing that autoimmunity is an epidemic, and realizing that what triggers an autoimmune condition is stress, and then getting deeper into what is stress. Because I thought stress was an emotional state, or I related to stress as being like this emotional state that was a result of a stress trigger. And what I've come to realize is that that's what a lot of us think and feel. And it's actually not true at all. And that, first of all, stress is a series of biological events that occur in the body. And these things are happening before you ever feel stressed. And stress triggers are not things that are going to be as obvious as like, ooh, someone jumped around the corner and said boo, and I jumped. Or, gosh, like this job is really stressful. Or, I just had a really stressful argument with my partner. Stress is actually environmental toxins, loud noises, blue light, temperature change. I mean, all of these like little micro adjustments that we have to do biologically. And so we're always going through this. And I realized that what I thought was stress was actually, I was completely depleted already, and already had been in a stress loop for years, and was in chronic stress, and my system had just been worn down to absolutely no adaptive energy left. that was now manifesting as quote unquote some autoimmune state. Again, it's here we are rambling. Sorry, folks. This is like, welcome to my brain. I can't answer questions. My
You're
God.
doing great.
But that's kind of how I think about health first. That's what I'm always thinking about, is like that adaptive energy and not tipping the scales and making sure that I'm staying in just trying to get back to homeostasis every day. With that, it's like you can leave it there. You just want to think about stress chemistry, or you can actually take that more into the quantum realm and let it sink in there. So I'm kind of toggling between the two. And with that, it's like at the heart of it, I've got some like quantum theories, that we could call epigenetics. We could also, just think about as consciousness. Consciousness creates the body. And then I'm grounding that all down with being diligent about doing certain things each day.
And what do you think currently for you is contributing the most to homeostasis, health, and energy?
So normally I would tell you 8 hours of sleep every night.
How's that looking these days?
It's not happening.
It's not for me either.
Straight up not happening.
I can't even jog vocabulary at this point in my life because I'm so underslept.
It's a struggle to make it to the end of a sentence. It's really like we're like running a marathon with each sentence here. So normally I would tell you sleep. And if you are out there and you can sleep, sleep, because it's so good for you. And it really, like, that was the catalyst. Before I was with my husband, I just wasn't sleeping enough, but I was doing all of these crazy wellness things that people love to hate me for, like cryo and infrared and, ozone. It's just like all the wacky wellness, excessive things. I was doing all of them all the time. And I still wasn't feeling great. And then my husband came into my life and he's like, you sleep 4 to 5 hours a night. I can't go on like this.
He's like, you're a party animal. You need to calm down. You're an MG?
Yes.
I knew it. I had a feeling you were, because you guys don't sleep enough usually.
No, it's terrible. So I was really offended and I was like, what? You don't want to talk to me all night? Like, you don't want to be sexy until dawn? Like, loser.
Yeah.
Boring. And then I started sleeping and my God, it was incredible. It took maybe 6 weeks to really feel it. But all of my wellness practices finally came alive. And I have to say, like, it was that level of sleep and banking the sleep. I do believe you can bank sleep.
I actually feel that way as well. People say all the time that you can't make up for a lost night of sleep, but I actually really feel 3 days of solid rest and sleep makes up for like 2 months.
I think so. And I also just have to tell myself that, because here I am 2.5 years later, not really sleeping. And I just think nature wouldn't do us like that. There's got to be some wisdom to motherhood.
Agreed. I think it was even one of my postpartum doulas was sharing, because I'm like, why? I can't even speak anymore. Like, what's happening to me? And she was like, your brain, I guess, in postpartum stays at a certain, it's not at alpha, it's not at theta, it's not at beta, but it's like an in-between space where you're meant to be so present and so, like you're saying, like primitive and animalistic. You're not meant to be theoretical right now, analytical right now, any of that. You're meant to literally just like be here and be present. And I was like, are you just telling me this to make me feel better? Because it actually makes me feel like I'm still somewhat intelligent.
I'm going to go with it. And I feel like, there is some wisdom to the postpartum period that I'm just going to call 3 years. Like, second time around, I'm just going to call it 3 years. First time around, I thought, well, I was like a single mom and I was doing a lot of co-sleeping
and so young.
and young. Yeah, really young. But nope, this time around, I'm just convinced that for me, the postpartum period feels like 3 years. But with that lack of sleep and lack of time and lack of self care and all of those things, there is some other thing that's happening. And I just think from a chemical standpoint, the bubble bath of oxytocin that you're in for those years, that is the best medicine. So normally I would tell you sleep is at the basis of everything. I'm going to change that and say that love is at the, so if you can't sleep, get some oxytocin, hug someone, love yourself, hug an animal. There are many ways to do it. You don't have to be snuggling a baby or a partner, but just those moments during the day when you can create oxytocin, you can really get into the parasympathetic, you can let the limbic system relax. That's so important. I really do think sleep is just at the heart of making any of your other practices work for you. Truly. I'm going to give myself and you and all other moms the get out of jail free card and just say that nature has another plan for you and we get other boons when we're not sleeping. So don't worry about that.
And one thing that I loved in my postpartum, because you were so generous and sent over a lot of super everything to make life so much easier. But one thing I loved that you shared was after your pregnancy with Rohan, you had a lot of depletion, it sounds like. And you said, I literally formulated super hair to not deal with the hair loss, because that's something every mom has come up to me and said, have you lost your hair yet? And I'm month 6 and I haven't lost any hair. So what's going on there?
I lost a lot of hair the first time around. So when I accepted my husband's kiss, I realized what was happening and it would be happening fast. And so, maybe my third thought was, I have to figure out how to not lose my hair this time. And, thankfully he won't be listening to this, so he won't know that. That was my third thought after our first kiss.
Totally.
So, yeah, I just started cocktailing a bunch of things and trying different things and at different levels and different methods of extraction and, looking into bioidentity of certain plants like saw palmetto. So I really did whittle it down to a formula. But again, I was just cocktailing and I was not pregnant and I was not postpartum, but I saw what it did for my hair, just healthy hair in a healthy non-pregnant state. And it changed my hair a lot. The speed at which it grew. There wasn't shedding in the shower. It really had my eyebrows just come in swift and strong. And the hair health itself. So launched it, put it out into the world. And part of this formula was that there is a multivitamin in it. So, it doesn't have your omegas in it. And I like to take a little bit more vitamin D. And I like, high doses of specialized B vitamins. But this is a comprehensive multi as well. So it's the hair and the multivitamin. And then I put it to the test postpartum and I didn't lose my hair.
Well, okay, so obviously I got to see you around the time when Rohan was young, and then I've seen you a few times recently, and you literally look like a different person to me. Obviously, just as beautiful as you've always been, vibrant, energetically, but your skin, I'm like, Amanda's aging backwards. Literally, I'm like, has she been doing work to her? Like, what's going on? Because everything's looking so beautiful. And I'm imagining not only from the beauty line, but also the super line. You have the magnesium, which is brilliant. What would you say the top 3 things are? Not to sit here and totally focus on beauty, but I'm going to for a moment. What would you say the top 3 things are in the line that are contributing to that outside of sleep?
I'd go back to the metaphysical and I would say that there was a really big shift that occurred for me. It's layered. So there were two big shifts that occurred. One is that when I fell in love with my husband, I felt really feminine in a way that I don't think I've ever felt. There is something about our union, and there's something about him. I would say that now I feel like I'm really in my healthy feminine, but before my husband, just being a single mom and running a business. And I think I've got that. I was a tomboy when I was a kid, and I relate to my masculine. And I just was in a hyper masculine state. I think that, again, going back to your consciousness printing out, I think that that was printing out and manifesting physically, and it was a vibe and it was physical. So, one, really being pulled into my feminine. And for me to be pulled into my feminine, the missing piece for me was feeling safe. And my husband, Greg, he's not like this uber masculine guy. There's part of him that's really healthy masculine, but he's very in touch with his feminine as well. There was just something about our chemistry. We talked about this. He maybe was a bit more in his feminine, and I was really in my masculine. And the alchemy of our beings together, I went really into my feminine, and I think he went way into his masculine. And so I think that actually started to print out. It was pretty fast. I noticed it. My body shape changed. I feel like my eyes changed, my face changed, my hair changed, my body language changed, my hormones changed. So I'm just going to say that that's part of it. And again, the feeling safe and the unstressing on a deep, deep level where, I went in and started to untangle a lot of trauma. And, I had worked so hard and so much, whether it was through meditating or through therapy or through shamans or through journeys. I'm like so much, And then I feel like I just hit a plateau, and I was able to really go deeper and do a different kind of work with having this partner by my side that I felt safe with. So that was a big, big thing that occurred. Another thing that happened around the same time was I hit a new level of healing with my autoimmunity and dealing with just this chronic systemic inflammation. And again, I'm going to say that went into the deep unstressing and the combination of the sleeping and the feeling safe and the, offloading trauma that I had been carrying around. And so had a lot of momentum there. And then the icing on the cake, I would say, is I started doing lymphatic stimulation. And so I had so much stagnant lymph that had been stuck, and just, a few sessions of moving the lymph around while simultaneously sleeping and having an anti-inflammatory diet and doing things to help the body detoxify, because I have a gene mutation that makes it a little bit harder for me.
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
MT. I think I have it double from both my parents. I've gotten in blood work before. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, but you get educated, you get the panels, you look at it. It's kind of like astrology. You take a look at what's going on, and then you've got choices on how you want to deal with it. Some people would just like to not know, and that's totally cool. For me, I want to know what I'm working with, and then, what can I do about it? And I guess the nice thing is that I find all of this fun. I don't find it unpleasant. And if I found it unpleasant, that wouldn't be a good place to be in life. But all of it is just deeply fascinating to me. And I love playing with my body and biology and thoughts and supplementation and seeing what happens. So between the trauma release, the unstressing, the feeling safe, getting my lymph to flow, and I think it had been backed up dramatically. It's stuff that I can go back and look at photos and it's like, whoa, okay. And then, like feeling sexy and feeling feminine. And I think having a lot of sex too, that changes a lot. And so all of that was in flow. And then I was really on a roll and it was like, whoa, now I want to start to do like these fun little things that, I've never done, like skincare. I've never done that before. I've never thought about that, and kind of getting into supplementation around skin and hair specifically and really doing what I could do there. So I went into the lab and I worked with scientists and chemists, and that's where you're going to see some of the things come out, like acid potion. We'll go from trauma release to retexturing the skin in a hot second. It's both of those things.
But like you said, it's layered.
It's layered.
Totally.
So, that really helped, and educating myself on, a hydrator versus a moisturizer and what that is. And, hydration is drawing water into the cells, where moisturization is about building the barrier and protecting from water loss. So like really understanding these more basic skincare and how the skin works, and then formulating things where it's like, just going to make the best thing possible. And there was a big hump that I think I had some beauty shadow actually, which is an interesting thing, which was maybe not being in my feminine, but I had a lot of embarrassment. I had to get through this hump of actually wanting to take care of my skin, wanting to take care of my hair shamelessly.
Where did the root come from?
I think it came from, being a teenager, and there was all of those 17 magazines and Cosmo and like how to take your blowjob quiz and like, are you wearing the right lip gloss to entice people? And I felt so personally bothered by that. As a teenager, I liked going to museums by myself and like smoking a little pot, and it was a cerebral adolescence. And I didn't appreciate the beauty industry and how it spoke to me. We can look at it on one hand, it's like, well, that's great, like feminism. The shadow side of that was that I rejected it to the point that, my feminine was maybe like a little wounded in there. And so, I think I worked out a bunch of that stuff. And there was a moment in life where I was like, I'm going for it. I want to take care of my skin just the same way I take care of my thyroid and my brain. And I don't want to have any shame around it. And, it's an interesting conversation with yourself, with other women, just being a woman and aging, and what does that look like and what does it mean? And if I take care of myself, is that vanity? Is it coming from a place of fear? Because I certainly didn't want to be in that bucket. It's been a journey, just getting into it and taking care of oneself and doing it from a fun place and a loving place and a celebratory place, and a healthy place, rather than like a punishing and a hiding and a masking. So I think that, I straightened my relationship out within myself there. That has allowed me to take much better care of myself. And then I'm also going to throw this in to keep it real, is that gray hairs. So gray hairs started coming in my early 20s. And I've been able to watch the grays come and go. So when I would have extreme periods of stress, gray hair would come and then they would fall out and phase out and go away. And I'm going to be 40 soonish, a year and a half. And so now they're really coming in, and they started coming in 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I started to notice them more, and I got my glutathione tested, and my glutathione was actually low. And so that was part of the impetus to formulate Super Beauty. I really got rid of my shame around beauty and like just went there and like named the pill Super Beauty.
That's awesome.
And so it's really a master antioxidant formula. But I think, there's a smaller portion of the world that would want to buy the master antioxidant formula that is about longevity and cellular health. And I think Super Beauty speaks to people in a more general way. And so this formula was around skin and, for me, hair and grays, but it's an incredible formula that, yes, I take for my skin and hair, but it's also for longevity and for cellular health and for inflammation and for immunity. It does lots of things. But I did notice that just optimizing my glutathione levels, they didn't get rid of the grays that were starting to come in, but they kept them at bay. I got myself another 3 years. And now, I'm 38 and a half and they're coming in more. I'm also just going through a lot personally, burning the candle at all ends. And so I've seen that show up. So just to keep our aging conversation real, I'm pretty chill about it until I'm not. I'll just tell you that I had a moment this weekend and I took the tweezers out and had to pull 8 silver hairs that I was just tired of looking at. So just keeping it real.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because I don't love silver hair and we all think it looks gorgeous on someone else. And there really is something about mortality, when you look in the mirror and it's like, I don't think this is ugly. And I think that nature's beautiful and I'm beautiful and women are beautiful and this process is beautiful, but I'm just not ready to die. Like, do you ever take it to that place?
All the time. To me, that's usually where I end up going. It's less about like the appeal and everything. There is obviously a big piece of I will become invisible. That's a piece that comes up for me. But certainly the mortality piece, especially now being a mom, is like, whoa. And it's wild because I think that's pretty common. People feel those feelings after a baby, but I mean, last night I sent Max this like YouTube CPR and choking thing. I'm crazy. I'm like, watch this all the way through and learn how to do it. And he's like, whoa, go to sleep. So I take it there for myself a lot because I'm in that place where, like you said, where I'm so content and there's literally so many moments in the day where I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you. Like, it's just nonstop gratitude. And then the second thought after that is, oh, I could lose all of this, which is my own trauma to unwind a little bit. But I certainly, with aging, take it there for sure.
And then you got to take it all the way through that thought. Or, I don't know, at least that's what I do in a lapsy moment with the tweezer man, with like my toddler pulling on my leg. And I'm like, hold on, so sorry. I just have to pull out these 8 hairs before we can go make breakfast because I can't look at death anymore. and then I'm like, whoa. And then it's done and I've done it. And then it's like the silly thoughts around this is not sustainable. That was just like kind of a micro hysterical moment. And then I think about death, for the rest of the morning. And I just try to think about keeping it close and thinking about it. And death is coming. And how can I meet my death the same way that I met the birth of my children? And I don't know, I'm prepping for my death. I don't know. You just wanted to know about skincare. My goodness.
Well, I love that we started out there, like you've been obviously, meditating on it and processing it so much because I still am yet to deal with death close to me in any capacity, like someone who I really, really is like intermediate to me. It still isn't that real. And you have faced it for the first time this year. And so, it seems like it is intertwined in a lot of places that you're looking at it differently. And honestly, it must be a really big spiritual opportunity too at the moment. Like you're saying, meeting death with the same preparation. And I say that energetically as the birth of your children. And it's something a lot of us just constantly avoid, or are running from or doing everything to experience there's just so many layers to it that it's actually interesting that this whole conversation during autumn, it's a really important one.
And I think, yeah, a conversation that we get to conveniently put off. We've really actually, if you look at our society, we've structured it that way. It's old folks' homes and it's the sanitization of death. And that happens in a hospital and we don't deal with the bodies. And we've got hair dye, all of this stuff to mask it and put it away. And we haven't been here before. As humans, we've had people die in our homes and you watch people grow old and you've got to feed them and care for them. And it's this natural flow of life and you're killing the animals that become your food, and death is part of the day to day. And it's not that way. It's not how we get our food. It's not how we see our loved ones go out. And yeah, I think we're missing some wisdom there. So I don't know. I guess I'm like still living a sanitized life where like my version of death is like my 10 gray hairs. But, it's something I like to think about. It's also something, and maybe you and Max do this, but I'll look at Greg sometimes and we'll just look at each other and be like, wow, we're on a trip. It's us and we're holding hands through this, but bodies are going to droop and decay, and we're going to watch each other die.
It's wild. I've witnessed a lot of relationships coming from blended families and things like that. And I think just being a projector, watching my parents' experience at relationships. And I think Max and I have a similar trauma bond where we've come together, and who knows what will ever happen in the future, always. But I think we both have such a deep understanding that we're like in it forever, and that we're so cool with that, and that neither of us is even slightly interested in deterring away from it. And there's this really interesting thing, like you're saying, we're missing the wisdom. In his family, he's primarily from Portland and it's a big family and they're so close and people stay together and it's really beautiful. He has this aunt and uncle. They'll be having their 50th anniversary very soon. And they both anti-age, like they've lived their lives. They've been in the sun. They've done all of the things. They've been through so many ups and downs through mental health and they're together. And it's cool being with someone who comes from that. Because to him, he's like, oh, no, I think you look the best when you wear like baggy Japanese clothes. You know what I mean? Like, so all that to say, it's a similar thing where, yes, we're on this trip together, but it's really cool being on this trip together and not having that added layer of all the insecurities that I've had in prior relationships and ones that I think a lot of people struggle with. And that's our version of it, which is really magical.
Yeah, Greg said something beautiful once, and I'll share it because as a woman, to hear this big, sexy, masculine drummer, man, God thing say it was like, oh, that's some beautiful wisdom that my woman needed to hear. We were at Esalen, and you're in the baths and everybody's naked, and you've got very young people and very old people. And so it's kind of this incredible, like this should be happening all the time. But in our sanitized life, you really have to go to Esalen and get in that pool to have that kind of like human experience of all the male and female bodies in all of stages of life. And to look around, it's really cool. I know you're not supposed to be looking at everybody's dripping, drooping, naked body in a nudist scene, but I do. And I like it. It's informative. So we were there. I had been on this weird little kick that was totally not real, but I was having this bratty little fantasy that I was expressing to him maybe the week before of like, in a perfect world, I wish I could just get this like teeny tiny little French tit job where like they'd still be small, but they wouldn't be like 4 years, 5 years of nursing in. And it was just like a bratty, weird, self-deprecating joke that I was sharing with him, and he really didn't like it. And it really was disturbing to him. And it was an interesting mirror for me where I don't even think I go down that path so much. But yeah, he didn't like it. And then we were there in Esalen and I had this moment and he was like, But the human life is an incredible psychedelic journey. And why would you ever rob yourself and rob me as your partner of getting to like watch our bodies go and change and droop? And, we become these other creatures. He was like, that's a beautiful psychedelic trip to be on together. Don't you dare rob me of that. And, how odd. How odd when the rest of your body goes and like you've got these things just sitting there.
That is magic. If all partners felt this way, regardless of the sex, it would be a very different society. I mean, that's absolutely magic.
We're trees. We think that trees are so beautiful and interesting as they get older, and I don't know, houses and rocks and, the wabi sabi of it all. And you can appreciate that aesthetic, but then it's like, whoa, when it turns to yourself, there's still some discomfort there. And I like to think that there is comfort there, and then there I am with the tweezers pulling out the gray hairs. And it's like, my God, we're going to be back in the same place in 4 months. What have you done? So I'm working with it. I think it's an interesting thing. I appreciate being able to talk about it openly and to not have any shame around it. And yeah.
How, and this will segue this into the book too, because I know you've been sharing recipes with your daughters, so sweet, on Instagram. How are you able to model in front of her? This is something that's on my mind all the time. And I would imagine Max is very similar to Greg, that postpartum body, like I've had a lot to say about it. And he's like, all you're doing is showing that to Teddy. Like right now, the way that we live, she doesn't have access to and won't for a while. Bless you, Teddy.
Bless you.
All of the media body dysmorphia and shaming and aging. It really has me thinking, I have to stop this first if I want to end the cycle for her, as much as I have control over, until she's obviously in the regular world a bit more. But how are you able to do that? How are you guys doing that?
Well, eating is something that just feels normal and healthy. So I'm not battling anything there. It's like, food as love and nourishment. We really savor that and get into that. Right now, we're in the phase of she just loves every part of me, and I'm still nursing, and so she loves her Mimi Ma's, and she cherishes them, and that's her whole world and can't get enough of them. And, I like catch myself, even just psychically, because babies are so psychic, especially when they're nursing. And it's like she is just loving on these boobs, and I'm looking and being like, there's always that part of me that's like, oh geez, yikes, this is not what it used to be before. I'm changing, I'm in a different life phase. We're not going back to perky boobs. We're not going back to fuller, voluptuous maiden boobs. And so I try to just stay awake, even to the thoughts that I'm having, because I think that's where it starts, is if you say all the right things, but you are beating yourself up in your head, children pick up on that. Well, everybody's going to pick up on that.
100%.
So I really just try to keep it with gratitude for the body and healthy self-talk that starts in the mind. And it's not always there. And then I just try to be honest about that and witness it and just like, oh, all right. There's the part of myself that is having some ungrateful, negative, judgy, critical body stuff. And there it is. And then I just try to be patient and loving with that part of myself, and honestly, like, have a little compassion for it, because, as women in particular, we're coming out of a really strange zone. We've been raised in very particular ways, and nobody ever told me to be kind and loving to the body. And I think that, that's something I've learned through birth and mothering. But the thoughts come up, and rather than shame myself further for them or be embarrassed, it's like, nah, I witnessed them and now I'm going to talk about them with all of you guys, and just sort of air it out.
Yeah, process it.
Yeah.
Well, lead us into the book. I want not to like go totally off tangent, but I want to hear about it because the last book was more, as much as I know, the last book was a book of recipes, more so cooking. This one too, but adaptogen based, correct?
Yeah, so the last book is like all the things from Moon Juice, and it's tedious. And are you ready to sprout and ferment and dehydrate and like totally change your lifestyle? But you will get these very laborious creations that we sell at Moon Juice now. So that was really, I felt like I needed to put that out there so that if you weren't near a Moon Juice, you could create them at home. People can create them in cafes in their hometown. And so that really was that project. And this book, I started this book a couple of weeks after I launched the last book, which was exactly 5 years ago, which was also exactly the place where I was beginning with Greg. And so this book has really, I was talking to him about it last night. He's informed a lot of it, but this book is very different. And the first thing that I wanted to do in half of the book is really around stress literacy. And kind of going back to what we were talking about before is just my own experience with putting an autoimmune condition into remission and realizing that at the heart of that was stress, and then realizing that I didn't even really know what stress was, and then realizing that at no point in life does anyone sit us down and talk about the biology of stress and how it shows up in your body and how it can manifest and healthier ways we can relate to that. So having this experience of really dealing with a lot of that stuff and untangling it, and some of it are these small daily habits that help, and certainly using adaptogens daily to help balance that stress chemistry and build up the resilience and the adaptive energy in the system. Another part of it was just, like I said, getting into a lot of like heavy old trauma that I was still carrying around. But I had this experience of unstressing in a very deep way. And coming back from that, all of a sudden, it's like you do all of this intellectual learning and then you go and you have a profound experience of it. And then all of that information hits in a very different way and it all starts to come together and make sense. Have you had an experience like that?
I've had a gazillion experiences like that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's what I think I appreciate so much about like Moon Juice as a brand, is because it feels like so much of it is obviously informed by what you're going through and healing yourself and flavors you've loved. But it's crazy because most often than not, when you create something, or now of course when you write something, it also seems to resonate so powerfully with so many. So it seems to be things that people are seeking, deeply. And I think that that's a really powerful thing to have when you have a brand, someone who has a brand themselves. And the more that we come from the place of what we're going through rather than trying to, fill a market, or I find, and this is a bit of a tangent I'm going off on, but I find that a lot of startups and things like that are trying to fill a void or a white space. And that's something I've always really appreciated about you and Moon Juice in general, is that it really comes from a place of your curiosity or personal experience or something you're going through or life. It's really beautiful to watch how much it resonates and how much it's needed.
Yeah, and clearly everyone is here today with you on your ride doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just, it became really important to me, having this deep experience and really understanding what I had been studying for so long and finally feeling like, aha, okay, like the key fits in the lock and we're turning it and the puzzle came together and like it really clicked. And so from that place, I was like, wow, I really want to share this, because if I could hand a manual to someone for them to really understand what are stressors in our environment, what is that biological response like? How can we relate to those environmental triggers in a different way? Stress perception is a big thing, because it's not about the stressor. I've had times in my life where, I've been so depleted and I've been so stuck in a stress loop that I get a parking ticket, and, I've got no other responsibilities in life but to clock in to work on time and, like, chop vegetables and go to sleep at night and brush my teeth. And, like, the parking ticket just sent me over the edge, and I couldn't deal. I really couldn't deal. And I always use that as this marker in my life of, whoa, that was a really low moment. That was a panic attack. That was like the most acute stress experience. And there wasn't a great reason for it. And I can look now at the balls in the air, the plates are spinning, like it's all too much for one person to handle. But just having the adaptive energy in my system, having that homeostasis, that place of balance, that place of relaxation, that place of safety within myself that I touch every day, my stress perception is very different. You could tell me that the aliens had landed. I mean, that actually sounds like great. That doesn't sound that stressful to me.
We're like, now? Where were you last year?
Yeah, right. Right. They've been telling us that for a while. But, you could say, like, all of civilization has collapsed and you need to move into the woods with your friends and family. I mean, that also, I keep giving you these dream scenarios.
Next, it's going to be like, sell everything and move to an ashram.
Okay. These aren't stressful. These are fantasies.
Yeah.
Also, probably realities coming for us. So maybe I'm just dropping that there for you guys.
Maybe you're channeling your mediumship right now through a guide.
You could tell me that everyone at work had quit and left, and I was in a great deal of debt. And, like, those things would be really stressful. But I think that I would have the resilience and the tools and the biology to meet that in a practical way and see myself through it. Whereas going back, we can look, and 18 years ago with that parking ticket, I couldn't deal. And it took a lot. It took a lot to get to that place. And a lot of it was actually this education around what is stress, what's happening in your body. We've all heard of the HPA axis, but actually, what is that? Actually, what is the endocrine system? What is actually happening when your hair is stressed or your libido is stressed? Like, how do these things animate locally? And I don't want anybody else to have to go on a 15-year journey. If I can hand you a manual of, I've had this pretty profound experience and here's some cliff notes from it. So that is half of the book, is this, like, high school biology of stress, which I think is really important for every being. The same way that it's interesting with our hormones. We don't really know much about it. And, like, where in life does someone teach you that until there's a fertility issue, until you've got PCOS, until you're having a baby? And then you dive deep and go. So that this is really just some stress literacy to empower you in your life, because no one's getting rid of stress. Like I said, we may all be, watching the aliens come join us, and civilization may be crumbling. So here's some tools to get balanced in yourself and to really own that power. Have some tools. Know that if you can find balance, if you can find that safe space within yourself, there's nothing you can't meet. But it is a daily practice. It is a daily practice.
Absolutely. And what I'm appreciating about tying it together, everything you've said on this, is that not only do you meet it, of course, edibly, physically, but you're also meeting things metaphysically as well. You know, you're doing the back end work. And it sounds like this new book is going to be such added value of how to incorporate it daily into your life and make it into a practice. And what I'm seeing on Instagram, making it into food. And then there's also the support, I'm going to just say from like the apothecary of mood juice as well. So I just think that's really, really powerful and very needed at the moment. Where are we going to be able to find this book?
You know, it launched today. So this is why we must have had all of those technical difficulties, because it's full moon
Wow.
in Aries and the book just
Yes.
arrived today. So you can find that book anywhere, everywhere, Moon Juice. Yeah. And the second half of the book are really easy, really yummy recipes. It's the antithesis of the first book. So don't be scared. There's no dehydrating, there's no fermenting.
There's no making the cinnamon buns.
There's no making the cinnamon buns. This is like all food that really came out of the best years of my life, which have been the last 5 years. And it's been food that I have really had this fun, loving time at home with my family and feeding a hungry man and a hungry boy. And, you know, I've got my anti-inflammatory ways of being in the world, which do not include grains unless I'm celebrating with pizza and bread and beautiful things. Then that's just art and entertainment. But for the most part, I don't have a lot of time for cooking. I need something that's nourishing and comforting and going to be good to my body, but going to feel good, you know, going to feel good to make.
Yeah.
So it's feel good food.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to explore deeper. And thank you for coming on. I'm so stoked. We got to have this combo. We have to have another one soon and go deeper.
I mean, this is really like anybody who made it through this journey with us. It's been a 2-day journey. We had to take a lunch break in between recording.
We did. I went and like picked out some weeds out of the garden with Teddy. She did some water play. We got back here, had the conversation again.
Anyone who's still here, Eleuthero cookies to you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Death and waffles and aliens.
We only scratched the alien surface.
There's a lot to discuss, Lacy. There's a lot to discuss, and we'll do it from your garden next time.
I can't wait. Done and done. We'll have a garden anti-inflammatory, non-grain bite in the conversation. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. I'm wishing the biggest luck on this launch, though it's not needed whatsoever. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Thank you, Lacy.
And for this month's 5-star podcast review winner, we have Samantha M.R. Samantha writes, "A year with TBM. I found the Expanded podcast almost a year ago through an interview Lacy had done on another podcast. At the time, I had recently been laid off from my job, had been ghosted by a potential partner, and was taking a trip out west to find some clarity. Her words resonated with me so much that I did nothing but listen to the entire podcast on my flights. I had known about manifestation, but only through the lens of positive thinking and visualizations, neither of which felt authentic to me. But after finding this podcast and Lacy's work, I realized that I was operating from a place of low self-worth in so many areas of my life, and that I'd hit a rock bottom. On October 21st, 2020, I signed up for the Pathway membership and can confidently say that TBM has helped me through one of the hardest times in my life. Since then, I've manifested my dog, who is an absolute blessing. The vet estimated his birthday was October 21st, 2020, the same day I signed up for the Pathway, which I thought was so special. I've met quite a few tests in both love life and career, but I'm learning more and more how to not settle, stay in my worth with each one. I cut off a potential partner that was sending mixed signals last month and put in an offer on my first home that same day. The offer was accepted a day later, and I'm set to close on the house on October 22nd, 2021, a year after starting supporting this work. I can't thank the TBM team enough. This is a life-changing podcast and work. Happy manifesting. What a beautiful Kismet story. It's really cool to see those little reminders from the universe, especially when we're getting signs, the dog's birthday is on the day you signed up and things like that. They're just little ways that we can even write them down on our manifestation list of ways that we are co-creating with the universe. So love that one. And Samantha MR, feel free to write into our intercom or hi@tobemagnetic.com to claim your membership. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review to be considered for next month's winner on iTunes. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Bye.